Hi, everybody. Ian Bremmer here, live from the Munich Security Conference, just kicking off in blustery Munich, Germany, and blustery inside the conference center as well. You've got attendees from across the Transatlantic Alliance, and the theme this year is under destruction, the destruction coming principally from the United States itself. To what extent is the United States walking away from the most powerful alliance that it itself anchored and set up over the course of the Cold War and beyond? The Europeans increasingly believing that the United States cannot be relied upon and is acting in an adversarial way. But there's a big difference between what the Europeans can do and will do economically and technologically to try to create their own set of rules, their own marching orders, and their own alignments that are more diversified from the United States. And I hear that, by the way, from every CEO that is here on the ground, those that are in the big security firms, the financial institutions, that it's harder for them to do business in Europe because there is that level of de-risking, that they need to partner more aggressively with European firms or else it's going to be challenging for them. I'm seeing all of that. That's very different from what can be done on the security side. And there, when Emmanuel Macron comes out and says that the Americans want to destroy Europe, and Mark Rutte, the Secretary General of NATO, says, grow up, you've got no choice but working with the Americans. The truth is, of course, in between. The reality is that the United States continues to be the dominant military power. The U.S. is right now thinking about direct military strikes, even a decapitation strike against the supreme leader in Iran. And the Europeans have literally nothing to say about it. There's no one that would be capable of deterring President Trump if he took that decision, and there's no likely blowback from other countries, allies, or adversaries if he went ahead with it. That is very different than what happens when the Americans suggest that they're going to put tariffs, for example, on European allies because they're not allying with the Americans on Denmark or on Greenland. It's about power, it's about capability, it's about relevance, and it's about willingness to spend and to engage going forward. Now, the Europeans here are having a pre-summit, a little castle, all talking about what they're going to actually do in response to this rupture. Everybody understands that the ability of the Europeans to act is a lot more constrained, it's a lot more diverse than the desire for them to be more competitive in response to the United States. A big part of that is spending money. The Germans are capable of acting outside of budgetary constraints, but no one else in Europe is, and the Germans aren't going to spend for the rest of Europe. That is, of course, something that they have to contend with because the Europeans are not a state. They don't operate like a state. The United States and China, of course, are. Look, this is going to be, I think, much more about concerns of how difficult Europe's geopolitical position is, as opposed to a conference about how much Europe is capable of actually doing, at least in the near term. And the fact that there is a massive gap between those two things is going to exercise the Europeans going forward. If anything, what we learned from Mark Carney in Davos was that all of the European leaders and the transatlantic leaders outside the United States are taking the Americans seriously when they say America first, when they say unilateralism, when they say transactionalism, when they say the order isn't going to work the way it has before. And recognizing a new global order, a GZERO, absence of global leadership, is the first step to responding to it. But recognition doesn't mean that you can respond to it. And it also doesn't mean that the Europeans will respond to it in a consistent and aligned fashion. And there is where I see Macron making big statements about the necessity of European autonomy, but not having either the political authority in his own country or the support across Europe to get that done. And I suspect the latter is going to be much more problematic, much more differentiated. And as a consequence, if there's any real takeaway from this summit so far, it's that the Americans are showing up in force. It's the largest delegation that they've ever brought to Munich Security Conference. That level of we're going to do things the way we want, it's clear what that means for the Europeans. It's not clear yet how the Europeans respond. That's it for me. I'll talk to you all soon.